right, folks. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no. Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Oh. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland is off today. We'll turn on the phones in a bit. I want to play this clip. We should say yesterday, my understanding is that SNAP payments were not frozen yesterday. And as of a couple moments ago, the freezing on federal grants was rescinded. Now, not necessarily the NIH grants or some of the other health grants. Let's just be clear. The chaos is the point. I keep reiterating this, but Russell Vought, the head of the OMB, the guy who basically came up with the one of the core agendas of Project 2025, who worked for Trump in the last term, is going to work for Trump in this term, and in between was basically set up a Trump administration in exile. He is on record of saying that their agenda is to traumatize federal workers. And in the either by design or as a byproduct, you're going to traumatize a ton of Americans. Obviously, the federal workers are Americans, but people who rely on the government. And Whether that means like your Medicaid payment, you can't get your drugs at the drugstore, your rural drugstore, because Medicaid is not doing reimbursement rates because they shut down the portal, or whether it's you don't know if you can send your kid to daycare tomorrow because when you went in today, the head of the daycare said, we didn't get our Head Start grant that we're supposed to get. I can't pay my teachers, or my teachers are going to quit tomorrow, or whatever it is. All of these things. And this woman was under the impression that her SNAP payments were going to get cut off. The confusion is the point. And she may or may not have the savvy to know, oh, this is not actually a function of the government. This is a function of the Trump administration. And in 4 years, it's possible to have a different administration and the government will behave in a different way. She may or may not know that. But the relationship between people and the benefits, the advantages, the help, stuff that they don't even necessarily are aware as a function of the federal government, is being severed, and that's part of the plan. Look at the way that she reacts when she hears that she may be losing her SNAP benefits. And understand, there's not that many. The amount of money we're talking about is minimal.
Somebody to fucking tell me they're lying. I need somebody to fucking tell me they're lying. I need somebody to fucking tell me they're lying right fucking now, because what the fuck do you mean that I'm not gonna get my fucking SNAP benefits? What the fuck do you mean? Because what the fuck is happening? Do you understand that there are people like me who cannot work? Do you understand there are people like me who have kids who cannot eat? Do you understand there are people like me who go hungry the last week of the month just so my kids can't eat? Because SNAP benefits is all we fucking get. I need somebody to please fucking tell me he's lying. I can't. What the fuck am I gonna do?
This is, we don't need to play out the whole thing, but this is, this reaction in some form or another reverberated throughout the country. Whether it's, somebody who gets their cancer treatment cut off because the NIH's grants are frozen, whether it's, some PhD student who's like going to go into this research and they called it off, whether it was people working at federal agencies who are seeing the writing on the wall. They don't know if they're going to have a job next week.
People who helped our occupation of Afghanistan, who are now just, left out.
You can just extend this to the Venezuelans who are here on temporary protected status because we, in the course of our attempted coup under Trump, not to mention all the other ones, but destabilized their country. I mean, it goes on and on. This is a feature, not a bug of everything they're doing. This is exactly what they want. And it's a perfectly rational reaction to it. And this is the importance of the federal government to people. I don't know what else to say about it. This is what they want.
This is a submerged. This is the type of thing we should be hearing a lot more of. Like people with this perspective, I see this woman invited to talk on talk shows about the importance of SNAP and stuff like this. And it's not really the point here, but the first time I saw this video, it was of Democrats saying she deserved it because she voted for Trump. And I'm actually seeing it even in our chat. Did she vote for Trump? Or in that question. No, she didn't. She didn't. She voted for, and she said, actually, we warned you about voting for Trump. So she voted for Democrats. That's a sickness to even ask that question about this, in my opinion. Like, I just think people need to get their priorities straight.
Number 13, I'm sorry, Sam, but I think you underestimate people's ability to associate the Trump association with this. It's the easiest association to make. Why do you think they rescinded the order? It was unpopular and they miscalculated. Republicans aren't geniuses and our population isn't completely dumb. It was a huge fuck up, and I think it lost them a lot of leverage. I mean, I agree. I'm not saying, like, we have a big country. It's not hard to find people go like, government hands off my Medicare.
I mean, even in the Dust Bowl, there was an issue with like Okie refugees, literally climate refugees, not wanting to take handouts as they were treated as we treat refugees currently. Like it is a sort of thing, but a sort of American thing that needs to be overcome of like, look, you get help.
If people were more aware, and I listen, this is, you see the president rescind this order, not because necessarily that woman is suffering or there are people out there who understand this. It's because senators get, what was it? Was it Cornyn today during RFK's hearing was talking about PEPFAR? I think it was Cornyn. Some Republican was talking about PEPFAR. This is his pet project about, AIDS work in foreign countries. That gets cut off. He calls the White House. What are you doing? There's no doubt they get pushback on this. But understand, if you want to make the argument to me that the American public understands the relationship between themselves and government, I feel like I have a fairly strong case. When people are out there saying, look, the government's too big, they have no idea. We spend too much money on foreign aid. And they would say this incidentally before, Israel and Ukraine, when a fraction of our budget is there. I just had a debate with 20 ranging from ding-dongs to just misinformed people out in L.A. Apparently it's coming out February 16th. And I can assure you, the level of misinformation as to what our government does is astonishing. There's a lot of things I can be accused of, but overestimating the broad ignorance of Americans as to what government does for them, and at least what it does, I don't think is one of them. King of all IMers, what's yellow and fuzzy and red all over? A baby chicken in the HHS secretary's blender. Okay. Risa, Matt Leck, can you apologize for calling Catholic converts freaks so this one person in the Discord can move on with their life?
I can. I do kind of believe it, I must say. I think a lot of the, especially conservative who go to Catholicism later in life, I got to say I have a prejudice against them. I will confess it. If you came to Catholicism for another reason, say you're a migrant in Central America or something and like the Pope's outreach, you're not a freak. Enjoy the church that I left.
Somebody just lost some of their dessert privileges at the commissary. I'm going to force Matt to give up a dessert at the commissary for Lent this year. So, what do you think about that?
This is the sort of thing I think of.
Now we can have a hostile work environment, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Conservative Catholic converts go like this.
Kanye will be looked at as someone that saved the Jews.
Mad Max, I agree with blaming the Democrats for the situation we're in, but I don't think we can absolve the American public either. Bernie ran twice. Where the F with the public when we needed them? If enough people came out for Bernie, we wouldn't be in this situation right now. I mean, listen, also, I am willing to put my capacity to blame the American public up there with anybody. But at the end of the day, there's no justification for what we're seeing. And when we move to these type of justifications too quickly, it is the job of the Democratic Party to be the opposition party. And they are being, broadly speaking, lame. There are some highlights. Let's play this
I think AOC is doing good.
I think AOC is doing good. I think, Pritzker was pretty good for a governor. I mean, I'd like to see, I could critique a couple of things, but here's Pritzker. Sometimes they go for the low-hanging fruit, and they refuse to expend any capital that the moment gives them to educate the public. And this is what, this is my small critique for Pritzker. It's a much bigger critique for folks like Chuck Schumer and Jeffries. And put up that Jeffries. Do we have that Jeffries tweet? I mean, you got to give me a freaking break here.
Print it out.
You cannot say this is the most important election this is an existential threat. Blah, 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 blah. And then Hakeem Jeffries puts up, what are you going to do? God's still on the throne. Excuse me? What the F are you talking about? Where the F is God in dealing with these workplace discrimination? Where the F is God in dealing with NIH grants? I mean, if God's on this throne, what's he doing up there? What's he doing? She's looking down going, hey, you know what? Medicaid payments? I got other shit to do.
Define minors as people up to age 19.
Listen, a lot of this stuff is petty. I'm just going to wait for huge wildfires. Oh, actually, no, I'm not. Let's see. Listen, when I decide to flood the whole planet, that's when you'll hear from me. Good luck, Hakeem. You know what? You know what else comes and goes? Not just presidents, humans. Honestly. I mean, I remember this place where there was no humans. What's the big deal? The dumbest. Put that back up again. I can't imagine if I was to sit down and write an Onion level response for how Democrats would respond to the, I know Hakeem Jeffries because he is the Speaker of the House, or I should say the minority leader now for the Democrats. The Democrats are a political party. They're involved in politics. If we don't have to worry about any of this shit because God's on the throne, what are we doing here? Why is he in politics? Get your ass to the church or wherever it is that you praise God and do your work there. Have somebody who goes in and believes in politics.
You know what I like to see come and go is party leaders who fail. I like to see them come and go.
This is just astonishing to me. The more I see it, the more enraged I get. The president of the United States basically shut down the government, fundamentally undermined one of the core principles of the way our government functions. Congress appropriates things, the president and the executive execute it. And this dude's going like, hey, I mean, here's another idea. Don't fucking tweet if that's what you got. Don't tell everybody none of this is important. Are you serious? Jesus Christ. I mean, you might as well say, at least we still have football. It's just the most offensive thing I can imagine. A politician of this guy's power writing to his constituents, and this guy's got, national constituency, saying whatevs. And you write this at the beginning of the term? What are you going to do for the rest of the term? Hopes and prayers? Jesus.
It's like Keith Orahel on Twitter say, we need wartime leaders, and Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries steps down. And every time I see one of them try to address an issue, they look to me like wooden warships that Britain tried to fight World War I with and just got wiped out by submarines and stuff.
It's not even, this is not a bad opposition. This is saying none of this matters. None of it matters. Not only are we not against what the president's doing, it doesn't matter. That's what this tweet is. It doesn't matter.
Sun will come up tomorrow.
I mean, I'm flabbergasted. You want to see weak response? Jeffries was none of this matters. And here is Chuck Schumer providing one of the weakest response. Understand, like you are given a political sort of moment. And the Democrats' response is, somewhere between it doesn't matter, or like we should let him hang himself. But to come back with this garbage, play Chuck Schumer.
Republicans are quite literally defunding the police. And on all these things, we will not stand idly by. The blast radius of this terrible, unconstitutional, and illegal decision is virtually limitless. Its impacts are going to be felt over and over and over again by families, and we are already in touch with families and people throughout the country to mobilize them against this cruelty, this blatant assault on Americans.
I mean, are you telling them that you're going to send more police to their homes? Is that the issue? Is that what government does? Is that what the federal government does? We're going to send more police to your homes. This is pathetic. This is beyond pathetic. Somebody should take away Hakeem Jeffries' phone. I mean, honestly, he should resign. Do we even need a House minority leader? God will take care of it. At least Pritzker is like making some hay of this. Again, like it's not just about him lying. It's about everything that they're doing. This is a full assault on the government, and it's an opportunity to explain to Americans just how relevant government is in their lives. Can things be improved? Always. Here's Pritzker.
Despite what the White House press secretary said at the podium earlier, I believe it is my duty to report to you the truth of what actually happened today in Illinois. Donald Trump's administration is lying to you. The White House's attempt to walk back what they did today does not match what we saw on the ground. They assured us that Medicaid would not be affected. That was a lie. Our state agencies were unable to access the Medicaid system until an hour ago, preventing payments for services. And this has been reported from states across the nation. When we reached out to federal agencies, they informed us that they have been directed not to discuss any guidance with states. They have canceled previously scheduled meetings for this week. The White House assured us that Head Start would not be affected. That was a lie. Providers across the state experienced outages, and some were unable to make their payroll. They assured us that they were doing nothing to take away individual assistance from the most vulnerable people in our state. But they refused to say that they would restore LIHEAP, the Low-Income Housing Energy Assistance Program, payments to support the unemployment system, and Meals on Wheels. These are programs that hundreds of thousands of Illinoisans depend on. Children, seniors, veterans, working parents. Let's just be clear about what happened over the last 24 hours. At 7:42 p.m. last night, we saw a memo from the White House saying that they were pausing federal funding across the board. This morning, along with all 50 states across the country, we discovered that our ability to access critical federal funding had been cut off. And now the administration would like us to believe that these were just coincidental website outages. Donald Trump and his administration have not earned the benefit of the doubt. They are either lying to us or they are critically incompetent.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Or he could have just said, you know what? God is great. God is great. So Let's, I'm going to get back to my golf game. Just unbelievable. Honestly, I don't know how somebody tweets that out. And then just like, oh, Jesus, I just realized I'm one of the top Democrats in the entire country. Did I just say none of this matters? Just an absolute lunatic. Again, if Democrats were a functioning opposition party and had leadership that understood the implications, I mean, what it leads me to believe is that like guys like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer have no idea the importance of what these programs do for people, or they wouldn't shrug it off in the way that they did. There's no cops. What? That's what people are thinking about? Medicaid gets cut off. Head Start gets cut off. Like Pritzker said, like Meals on Wheels. All sorts of health services and this and that. And the first thing you say is cops. In fact, the only specific thing we heard him say was cops. And Hakeem Jeffries says, well, God is great. So, what are you going to do? We're all just ships passing in the night.
And also just mention, the Democrats benefited from the defund the police energy in 2020.
100%. And apparently the whole crime narrative didn't quite help them in the way that they thought it was.
Interesting.
Oh, incidentally, that was also pushed by a guy who's been deep into the investigation by the FBI with Eric Adams. But putting that aside, it makes it really hard for them to take advantage of when a guy, let's say Rich McCormick from Georgia's 7th district, Republican, goes on CNN and explains why a funding freeze for publicly funded school breakfast and lunch not that big of a deal.
Look, I mean, that is a valid goal, right, to save money and be more efficient, right? But the bottom line is, right now with this freeze, vulnerable populations could be directly impacted. And so my question to you, just to follow up with you, would you support getting rid of school lunch for vulnerable kids and breakfast and Head Start, for example, and getting rid of childhood cancer research? Do you support that? And what do you say to your constituents? I want to follow up on that question too, because I didn't hear an answer from you.
Sure. So I'm an ER doc, and I know that philanthropy is where you get most of your money for childhood cancer research, for example. And it's not just child. I mean, you look at what the president just proposed, a $500 billion spending bill on AI to produce cancer early detection in the first stage on most body parts. That's his spending bill where he wants to increase cancer research. So it's just about what part of the money it comes out of. When you talk about school lunches, hey, I worked my way through high school. I don't know about you, but I worked since I was, before I was even 13 years old. I was picking berries in the field before we had child labor laws that precluded that. I was a paper boy. And when I was in high school, I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home, instead of going to work at Burger King, McDonald's during the summer, should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? I think we need to have a top-down review.
I think you're painting a lot of these kids with a broad brush. I would say that's not necessarily a fair assessment of all of the kids. So you would say all the kids in your district who use the free lunch, for example, or breakfast, they're all just sitting at home and not working. Okay, I just want to clarify because that seems like what you were trying to insinuate.
This gives us a chance. This gives us a chance, though, to see where is the money really being spent. Who can actually go and actually produce their own income? Who can actually go out there and do something that makes them have value and work skills for the future? I mean, how many people got their start in fast food restaurants when they were kids versus just giving a blanket rule that gives all kids lunches in high school who are capable of going out and actually getting a job and doing something that makes them have value, thinking about their future instead of thinking about how they're going to sponge off the government when they don't need to. We don't give people value. We don't give them the ability to dig themselves out when we penalize them for actually working and actually keep them on welfare. That's what's been the inner city problem for a very long time. We need to have a top-down review so we can get people out of poverty, because you know what? America's very good at creating jobs and giving people worth, and we've been very traditionally good at that, but we're losing our way. And that's when we give people incentives to stay at home and not work. That doesn't work for America.
But a lot of these kids aren't even of like working age. They're young kids, and as you well know, and also some of the kids at Head Start, they're
that's why
like
I mentioned
5 and
labor
under.
laws.
Yeah, that's why the problem is that our labor laws, or child labor laws, are getting in the way. I mean, you know, how this guy's not played on a loop over and over again.
A top-down review, meaning a congressman originally elected to the wealthiest congressional district in the United States of America, which is what McCormack was in Georgia. Yeah, let's see what he says about kids going hungry.
Let's see how many kids actually go hungry and get malnourished, and we'll see. And then we can get a sense of how many we really need to feed.
And maybe they could go work at McDonald's instead. They probably offer a lunch break. Have a McChicken instead of something the government, sponging off the government, eating, lunch food.
Oh, hold on. Here's Hakeem Jeffries. He's going to jump in. Don't worry, God will take care of it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, just, we as a society are just not up to the moment. It really does feel like that.
We're on the wee part of the slippery slope that we've been on for a while.
Edward Gregorian, SB 286 was introduced in the Senate trying to make masking in public illegal. In the U.S. Senate? Also, Gregorian says that loop in Vegas can do 4,500 people an hour. What can your little subway do in New York?
Significantly more than that.
He's being facetious.
Right, I know. People don't know that, though.
Oh, in an hour, it probably moves hundreds of thousands.
Elon was just straight up lying about that subways were inefficient compared to his stupid, tunnel.
JJ, federal employee here. Should I take the buyout and resign? Can you repeat that about the rescinded email? Well, the email's the email is not rescinding the buyout thing. It's rescinding the freeze, the blanket freeze across the Fed. But here is Tim Kaine on the buyout. Look, it's easy for me to tell federal workers, don't take the buyout because we need you. It's easy for me to say that because I'm not dealing with the insecurity of what happens if Trump fires me, or how miserable are they going to make it in this office. But just in terms of efficiency, again, I will repeat, you have about 2.1 million federal workers, which is, as a percentage of the working population, more or less where it's been, same percentage for decades upon decades. Probably 60 years. And efficiency is not trying to drive out any federal worker, regardless of what their status is, what their job is. That's not efficiency. In fact, that's the definition of something that's inefficient. It's completely unstrategic. Here is Tim Kaine basically telling folks to ignore Trump's offer. Incidentally, this comes from, this is the way that Elon Musk did it at Twitter.
And they received an email that said, from the administration, if you tender your resignation by next Friday, we will guarantee you payment through the end of September, whether or not you show up for work. So tender your resignation, and then, boy, it's just going to be a gravy train. You're just going to get paid for 7 months without working. The president has no authority to make that offer. There's no budget line item to pay people who are not showing up for work. This is a guy who made this promise to contractors again and again and again when he was a private business guy. Oh, come work for me on my casino. Come work for me in a hotel. We're going to do a handshake. We're going to do a contract. The contractor does the work and then finds out they get stiffed. So my message to federal employees who receive this is, yeah, the president has tried to terrorize you for about a week and then gives you a little sweetheart offer. If you resign in the next week, we're just going to pay you for doing nothing for the next 7 months. Don't be fooled. He's tricked hundreds of people with that offer. If you accept that offer and resign, he'll stiff you just like he stiffed the contractors. He doesn't have any authority to do this. Do not be fooled by this guy. You were here before he was here, and you'll be here after he was here. Show up for work, be diligent, serve Americans every day, make their life better, answer their phone call, give them an answer, track down their constituent call. Don't be fooled by a fake offer that because he's terrorized you in the last week, it would be easy to just resign now and get a check for 7 months, because I can tell you that promise is worth nothing.
Mortified Penguin on the IM. Hey, crew, Fed here. To my fellow Feds, do not fall for the scam. There is no budget for what they promise since we're still on a CR. It's nakedly obvious. There is no budget for this. And their rescission on the memo that said we're going to pause all federal grants and whatnot essentially means that for the time being, they understand that the Impoundment Control Act is still the law of the land. They don't have the ability to decide, oh, actually, we're going to underfund this and we're going to use it as some type of slush fund to pay out severance for federal workers. That's just not happening.
And that is Trump's pattern with regards to paying contractors, even contractors who are, say, illegal Polish migrants who are removing asbestos for Trump Tower in the 80s, is to exploit their labor and then threaten to stiff them. And, in that case, call information or border protection if they decide to get too pushy about it.
The Echo Machine, didn't Jeffries tweet that 3 days ago before Trump's order? Which order?
After the NIH one.
I don't care if he said it on day one. I mean, he's the head of a major political there's two of them. He is the head of the opposition party, at least in the Congress. And he's basically saying it doesn't matter who's the president because God's still on the throne. I mean, if anything, the fact that 3 days later this order goes out is evidence of how blinkered from a political standpoint that is. But if he believes that shit, it's even worse.
Yeah, tell Meals on Wheels that God's on the throne.
God. All right. We got 24 minutes to take phone calls. We'll probably just take a couple. Militant apathy. Sam, this Jeffries thing is a blind spot for you, bro. Listen.
What?
The idea that Hakeem Jeffries has to tweet that God sits on the throne because his name is Hakeem Jeffries. He can tweet that God sits on the throne, but to make an issue, to say presidents come and go is saying none of this matters. If he wants to get on on Twitter and say, distinct from the fact that Donald Trump is there, if he wants to write, Donald Trump should understand we're all God's children, and what he's doing is hurting people, I got no problem with that. What I got a problem with is him saying that that it doesn't matter who's the president as long as God is on the throne. I'm sorry. If he can't serve as the leader of the Democrats in the House without saying that politics are irrelevant, then he's not qualified to sit there.
What's the blind spot that we need to pay lip service to God in politics?
Militant apathy. Dude, that's what people say when hopeless shit happens. I'm sorry. I get it. But if the leader of the opposition party says this is hopeless, then we're done here. Wrap it up. Wrap it all up. That's exactly what I'm saying he shouldn't say. I don't need to reach out to a black clergyman to get some context because he's not a black clergyman. I don't understand why this is so hard to understand that a political leader should be not saying it's hopeless. So let's just wait 4 years and hope that the best thing happens. I don't give a shit what the context of that is. Here's the other context. He's not in church. He's on Twitter. Calling from a 214 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Redford in Dallas.
What's your name? Redford.
Redford. I called, 2 years ago to talk about the looming real estate crash for commercial real estate. If you don't remember, that's fine. But I had two disparate topics, one somewhat related to that. If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So you had Judd Legum on maybe like a year or year and a half ago to talk about the RealPage lawsuit.
Yeah.
There was a recent update to that lawsuit where 2 states essentially joined in and are now suing. I think it's 6 or 7 of the U.S.'s major landlords. For sort of the same price fixing.
That happened about a month ago, right?
Yeah, it was towards the beginning of the year. I don't remember the exact date.
Got it.
I didn't have any specific update on it, but would love if maybe y'all could have Judd back on if he's still on that beat to talk about it.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if it's going to be interesting to see. If the Trump administration maintains that suit. I mean, now that it's joined by states, that's helpful. But it would be interesting to see if the Trump administration maintains that suit. I would be surprised.
And that's sort of the aspect I wanted to get more info on. It's been super hard trying to find anything on it. Even as somebody who's adjacent to the industry. So that was the first thing. The second. My daughter was diagnosed with diabetes when she was 3 years old, so this was probably 2 years ago now. So I'm pretty clued in on insulin related legislation and lawsuits. Your home state maybe 2 weeks ago filed a lawsuit against some of the major manufacturers. And what are called PBMs, which are sort of the middlemen between
pharmacy benefit managers. Yeah,
exactly. This is another subject that I've been sort of struggling to find more info on, but essentially, it's arguing that they were doing some sort of price fixing between the two. So, ironically, these 2 lawsuits are somewhat related. But I don't know if you all have anybody that...
we've talked to David Dayen and Matt Stoller about PBMs on multiple occasions over the past couple of years.
Sure. Yeah, they're the bane of my existence. But, from my reading of this, I think the Massachusetts lawsuit has some traction, and I think that there is basis, just from my own personal experience with dealing with them. And so I don't know if you can point me in the right direction or of people to be following on that stuff, because again, there's so much drinking from the fire hose we're doing now.
No, I think Dayen and Stoller and are good places to start on the PBMs.
Perfect. All right, great. And I've got minor updates on the real estate stuff. I'll call back in the next few weeks once I've sort of gathered my stuff.
We'll know in a few weeks, I imagine. Someone just wrote that Harlan Crow has a piece of rail page, so I would imagine it's.
Yeah, I have some personal dealings with Harlan as someone who, sort of works adjacent to real estate in Dallas. The guy's a total psycho. I don't know if you've read the it was either Forbes or Vanity Fair article maybe 20 years ago that was written about his collection of Nazi art.
Oh. Vaguely, I certainly remember hearing about it, but.
Yeah, so he basically hired. There's a great Forbes article about it that I can send to the email, but he basically hired these mercenaries to go into failing former Soviet republics at the end of the Soviet Union and steal statuaries. He also, as part of that, made a bunch of purchases of like Adolf Hitler's personal paintings. So in the mid '90s, he got that got publicized somehow, and he got in some trouble for it. But anyway, that's unrelated.
Appreciate the call.
I think thanks.
All right, thanks. All right. This breaking. I mean, this is the way it's going to work, folks. This is the way it's going to work. This is Caroline Levitt. She is the woman who lied yesterday about the tens of millions of dollars of condoms that the U.S. supposedly sent to Gaza. She wrote, "This is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction. The president's executive order on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented, but it's unclear who implements this if it's not the OMB." I mean, you understand, this is what I keep saying, is that like they are taking a sledgehammer, they're going in and they're doing demo. They don't care if they're taking out something structural or not. They don't care. All they're trying to do is destroy and demoralize the administrative state. And so they're going back and forth on this to confuse people, to make it harder to bring a court case against it. I mean, you can see it rippling through. I mean, just the conversation we've had in the past 2 hours is a microcosm of it. Is this legal? We have that conversation with Elie Mystal. And then midway through the conversation, the OMB rescinds its memo. And then in the wake of that, they rescind the rescission of the actual act. And we're going to have to figure out how to, deal with this stuff. Rescinding the memo, literally not the contents of it. Yes, Harlan Crow is Clarence Thomas, billionaire sugar daddy. How do we not remember the Nazi memorabilia story? I do remember it. I do. All right. Final call of the day. Probably. We may have time for one more. Calling from a 308. I know. It's just, this is, we gotta get it. Go ahead. Who's this?
You seem a bit flustered. This is
I am. Kowalski.
All right. You know what? All right, we're out of here. Let's go. Anyways, I was calling because I wanted to give some people some insight on what we should be expecting from our food systems, which may or may not be failing. Are you interested?
Sure.
All right. Well, unfortunately, no good news. So I'm sure a lot of people have been saying that there have been some raids, and this has been causing some issues with some harvests, and then in like a lot of the dairies, and then probably the meat processing, although the jury's still out on that. The big issue when you interfere with a harvest is obviously that means, there will be a shortage in supply. And if there's a shortage in supply, especially with agricultural goods, the prices go up. We will likely see pretty record high produce prices. But on top of that, if we get hit with tariffs, this is likely going to cause an increase in meat costs for us in the United States. Now, traditionally, this would not be the case, but unlike the last time we've seen this on a major scale, we never were dealing with just like 5 meatpacking cartels controlling the industry. So, say one of our export partners decides to hit us with a reverse tariff that impacts our beef supply. Now, some of our beef will get exported to different vendors, but they will be purchasing them at cheaper rates because we would be considered an unreliable partner. So that's like a risk factor that gets built into the cost. So here domestically, the price will go up even though the supply will go up because the people who control the meatpacking plants will just say, well, we want to keep the same profit levels, so we'll just raise the cost.
We're losing on the export.
There's nothing you can do about that. Yeah. So you lose money on the export, and then you lose money here at home because consumers here will have to spend a greater proportion of their income on food. And the only body that can actually go after these cartels is Congress, who is, I guess, just feckless. So, yeah, there's really no good news on that. I mean, the only good news I do see coming from all of this is like when you start looking at $10 milk and egg shortages and meat that's going to be like prime rib prices for ground beef, I mean, we might actually start seeing a lot of anger. And if anything, that's what the Democrats need to be saying is like, we need people in the streets protesting because like that's the only card we have left to play. Like we're still the majority of the country. Like this is what needs to happen.
But Kowalski, I mean, okay, egg prices can go up, milk prices can go up, meat prices can go up, but God's still on the throne, dude.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Is he in the combine harvester?
I mean, God is on his throne, but so far in the Bible Belt, he's thrown them a goddamn ice storm. Out here in the middle of the country, he has refused to give us moisture. He's burned L.A. to the ground. And, I mean, he made the inauguration so frigidly cold that the cowards had to go inside the rotunda that their own supporters tried to murder politicians in only 4 short years ago. So, I mean, I think God is sending us some clear indications that he is not happy.
Yeah. All right, fair. Maybe, this is God's plan to get people lower their cholesterol.
Yeah. Oh, that's another good one. So, in more bad news, this virus stuff.
The bird flu?
Yeah, it's probably worse than we're thinking just because of how much, like, either there is incompetency to where we're not getting the right information, or it's so bad they don't want to scare everybody. I'm leaning more towards incompetency because I think, them, like, trying to prevent fear is, like, not even part of the equation anymore. But traditionally, from my understanding, when these big bird houses or, like, hog barns or whatever, when there are these outbreaks, the protocol is you exterminate every, like, one of these animals within a 6-mile radius, and then basically the FDA and the USDA quarantines a greater perimeter, and then they monitor for the outbreak spreading.
Right.
The reason they take such drastic measures is because you do not want these things to get out, because the more chances of these popping up in other barns increases the chances of, like, animal to human transmission, but at the same time, it also safeguards the food supply. And on top of that, if the government is doing these freezes, traditionally, when you exterminate the animals, you get paid disaster insurance because, it's an act of God, and it's like a national security thing. So it only makes sense to compensate these people for, destroying their entire herd. But if these checks aren't clearing, or if it's not going out, that's going to create added risk. So, like, rebuilding after all of this would be even more expensive, if that's even on the table. And, I mean, I could also see a lot of small towns that are particularly reliant on immigrant labor to suffer immensely, just because, like, so much of our processing capacity here in the States is really reliant on immigrant labor. And, like, an argument I keep hearing from so many of Trump supporters is, like, oh, you Democrats, and they spell it with a KKK, or just want your slave labor like always. And it's like, well, no, we keep advocating for visas for these people so, they can get proper labor rights and, they don't get paid under the table. But, it seems to me, and this is just, anecdotal, everyone I talk to, on social media, they keep saying the same thing. We have all of these prisoners that need to be working. So, I think, and I don't follow conservative media, but I think they're creating the narrative for increased prison labor to try to fill the gap, but it won't work.
Why won't it work?
So,
I mean...
firstly, we don't have enough prisoners. Secondly, prisoners wouldn't be motivated to do it. Thirdly, it's immoral. And
oh, I know.
I mean,
immoral,
they've already tried it once in Georgia and it failed.
Right. When they that was a couple of years ago, and we lost a year of peaches essentially.
Bonded labor. Do we have any lessons from American history if that's efficient or not? I'm trying to think back. I think it might not be.
Well, during the Civil War, the Midwest had twice as many farmers as the entirety of the South, and it fed itself and a good chunk of Europe without much of an issue, and there wasn't even a slave involved. And the South starved during the Civil War.
I have some, occasionally I bring it up on the program, the bird flu stuff, and people are and I haven't hit the alarm yet, but they're starting to do the dinner bell a little bit. And I just saw there was a squirrel up in Albany, New York that had bird flu they found with H5N1. I can't imagine they're testing too many squirrels, so I suggest there's probably more than one that they stumble upon. And H5 or H9N1, I think it is, they found, which is even rarer. God's on the throne. Maybe this is I worry about it, but that gives a good segue into talking about RFK's hearing. So let me let you go, Kowalski. But thank you for the cheery farm report.
Hey, on the bright side, like I said, this is going to eventually galvanize people into class consciousness, and the masses will begin to protest.
I hope you're right. We'll see.
I am definitely right. And if I'm wrong, Don Brown. Okay. All right. Goodbye.
See you later. Folks, that's it for our phone call portion of the program. No one held on the phones for longer than 19 minutes today. So that's a really good number. Let's play this clip of Ron Wyden talking to RFK Jr. I mean, it was 7 minutes. Maybe we can start it a little bit into it. But Wyden went hard. What was also interesting, and Maggie Hassan, after this, senator from New Hampshire, started praising Kennedy's past statements of being pro-choice. Now, to be fair, they were all the way back in 2023. And Kennedy does have trouble maintaining consistency with certain things over the course of, a matter of months these days. But apparently it caused a cat turd. Is that his name on Twitter to pull his endorsement of RFK? But here is Ron Wyden speaking to RFK about his past position on vaccines.
Mr. Kennedy, you have spent years pushing conflicting stories about vaccines. You say one thing and then you say another. In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were anti-vaccine. But during a podcast interview in July of 2023, you said, quote, "No vaccine is safe and effective." In your testimony today...
Pause it for 1 second. I just also got to say, that is not me breathing that heavily. It is one of our geriatric senators who apparently didn't realize like they're breathing into the microphone. It could have been RFK. I don't know, but somebody is on there is like if they've been wheeled in on some type of ventilator.
Prove you're not anti-vax, you note that all your kids are vaccinated. But in a podcast in 2020, you said, and I quote, you would do anything, pay anything to go back in time and not vaccinate your kids. Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true. So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts? We have all of this on tape, by the way.
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this. He asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective. And I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right. So
he interrupted me at that point.
Now, pause it for a second. I just want to say, I've watched that, and it's quite possible that he was going to go on to say for every person. But then why isn't he on there also talking, there's no medicine whatsoever that is safe and effective for every person? There's actually, you know what? There's no foods that are safe for every person. Nothing that exists in the world is safe for every person. You could be petting a little tiny kitten and maybe it has some type of like virus on it and it scratches you and you die of cat scratch fever. It's just like, these are hedging terms. He has said, I run into people when I'm hiking up in Topanga Canyon or wherever it is up in LA, and I tell them, you know, don't get your kids vaccinated. And hopefully he'll hear it and then somebody else will say it to him and they won't get their kids vaccinated. My own personal conversations with him, where he was convinced it was thimerosal. And then when I was like, a couple years later, they've taken the thimerosal out and there's no increase in autism rates. It's still in there. What? It's just a coincidence that every other vaccine is also problematic. Go ahead.
Vaccines.
Right. So
he interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden. So bringing this up right now is dishonest.
Let's be clear about what you've actually done then, since you want to deny your statements. For example, you have
Kennedy
a history
like
of trying to take vaccines away from people. In May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to not only block Americans from having access to the COVID vaccine, but to prevent any future access to the life-saving vaccine. Are you denying that? Your name is on the petition.
We brought that petition after CDC recommended the COVID vaccine without any scientific basis for 6-year-old children. Most experts agree today, even the people who did it back then, that COVID vaccines are inappropriate for 6-year-old children who basically have a zero risk from COVID. That's why I brought that lawsuit. I don't want to, I want to emphasize
Mr. Kennedy, the facts, the facts.
All right, we could go on with this, but we don't need to. A couple of points. One, this petition was not revoke the use of the vaccine for 6-year-olds and under. It was to revoke the use of the vaccine, period. The COVID vaccine. So that's disingenuous. And then Wyden goes on to read stuff from Kennedy's book on measles, where he says measles is not, parents have been fooled into thinking that measles is deadly. And then he says it's only 1 in 10,000 kids who would die from measles in the 60s.
Yeah, Bradley, put up this. There's a type of fallacy that's being used a lot by Republicans here called the Mott and Bailey. And can you make that smaller so we can see the whole thing? And this is just what a Mott and Bailey is from medieval times. The fallacy goes is where the argument conflates two positions that share similarities, one modest and easy to defend, and one much more controversial and harder to defend. That's the Bailey. The easy one is the Mott. The arguer advances the controversial position, but when challenged, insists that only the more modest position is being advanced. Upon retreating to the Mott, the arguer may claim that the Bailey has not been refuted. And you see this with RFK here. You also see this with Hegseth when he's like, on those podcasts where I said no women in combat positions, actually I meant we need standards, and if they pass the standards, then fine. It's type of chicken shit argument.
I will also say, just in watching the questioning, it was it John Kennedy from Louisiana, Republican, I think it was. Was that who it was? Was questioning RFK Jr. Is he a doctor? And
are you talking about the Medicaid questioning?
Yes.
Cassidy's a doctor.
Oh, John Cassidy.
Other
Bill
Louisiana
Cassidy,
senator.
yeah, Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
Cassidy was asking about Medicare, and I'll tell you something. RFK did not expect to have, it seems, anyone, no less a Republican, question him on actual questions regarding Medicare, Medicaid. In addition to RFK celebrating Medicare Advantage, which is a complete ripoff, both for the U.S. government and for a lot of the subscribers to it. And yes, Kennedy gets Medicare Advantage. I'm quite sure he has other health insurance as well. That is not Medicare. He doesn't rely on. But he doesn't seem to know any of the intricacies of this agency. People, people talk about he's going to be a head of HHS and he's going to institute, no processed food or whatever it is. I don't know how he's going to go about doing that. That seems to be all to be legislative. He's not going to have the only thing he's going to be able to do, really, from his stated agenda, is to inhibit vaccines. But putting that aside, he doesn't seem to understand any of the dynamics that are going to be necessary for overseeing Medicare and Medicaid. Understand, HHS is a huge, huge agency. I think after the VA, in terms of what we're talking about, discretionary spending, it is, and some of it is non-discretionary, it being Medicare, I think it's the second biggest agency there is on a dollar for dollar basis. And he doesn't seem to understand the intricacies of stuff like Medicare and Medicaid. That seems to be an afterthought. And I mean, he's just wholly unqualified, aside from the anti-vax stuff. But we'll see.
Maybe we'll play it tomorrow with Emma, but I liked the questioning where he was asked, so you have all this tough talk about bodily autonomy, and what is your position on Trump's anti-abortion policy? He's like, I agree with Trump about abortion being a tragedy.
Over and over again. Also, I don't think that there is ever in the history of this country been a nominee who says the words cousins more than RFK. Everything is about, he's got so many cousins. Some are some agree with vaccines, some don't. I don't know why he keeps citing his cousins. As if somehow his cousins are representative of the,
probably because if he wasn't from that family, no one would be paying attention to him.
Yep. All right, folks, we've run out of time. I'm going to read 3 IMs and then get out of here. Apologies. I got to get going. You enjoy my socialism. I really hope federal workers are not dumb enough to believe that Trump will follow through on his promise of a severance package. I don't think it's just a question of being dumb enough. I think it's also a question of just being like exhausted by already what's happening and the thought of what can happen future.
Tapping out.
Goose, this is the honeymoon phase. It's only going to get worse. Maybe if Trump fails the second pandemic, he'll be fully prepared for his third term.
I mean, who knows what the immediate polling is going to, average out to be, but he's already made DEI way more popular than it was before he was in office, and his popularity seems to be tanking.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to make a difference.
I think it'll make a difference in Dems' willingness to, go at him. I think once they see unpopularity, they might, change their approach.
From your mouth. Final item of the day. Just asking if she voted for Trump is the Democrats' problem. Saying FAFO or laughing at them or calling people dumb is not going to make them vote for Dems. Caring about what they need will. It's material. Aside from Gaza, everything else is fluff.
I'd like to wish all those people doing the F around and find out stuff were bots made by Elon to make liberals look bad, but I worry that they're not.
I think, listen, there is always a danger of overestimating what the implications of a dozen or 50 people on Twitter are saying. Because even if all 50 of them were, members of the Democratic National Committee, it's still not representative of broad swaths of people. The likelihood of that, I think, is quite low. I would imagine any type of situation like that, you're getting bots, you're getting people who just want to be agitating and whatnot. There are some who do it. There's some big accounts who get on there and say this stuff. And some people do it specifically because they are engaging in a political battle and they want to push their narrative that there was no failure associated with Biden administration, no failure associated with the Harris campaign or all of that. So I would take those people with a grain of salt, personally. But is that Megyn Kelly behind RFK? Yes, it is. I don't know why. Bradley, Matt, Emma, and Absentia, great job today. Shout out to Kelly. Old Kelly in the house. Not old,
some people heard your laugh.
There you go. Folks, Emma will be here tomorrow. I'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye.